I'm not getting a notification. Let's see.
Maybe refresh.
Oh, there we
Okay.
go. I'm there.
Okay. Good. I had the mic on initially, so it's off, and we should be good.
They can
What?
they can hear us. Try again. Yeah, it looks like it's muted because I could hear myself. Um. Oh no. I could hear myself.
That might provide some feedback. We are now live. Welcome, everyone, to our first competition live. I am Julia Usher here from my basement kitchen in St. Louis, Missouri, to answer all of your questions about my cookie art competition, which is now open for registration and closes for entries on September 15th. I just want to say a few remarks about the competition for those not familiar with it before I introduce my special guest today who will be helping to answer questions with me. First of all, the competition once again is online this year. It was online last year. In the past, since 2013, in fact, it's been held at a physical location, either at the Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show or at That Takes the Cake. Due to COVID, we've gone online in the past 2 years, and we're continuing that way this year, hoping to return to That Takes the Cake in 2023. The cool thing about that is that the competition this year is again open to anyone, anywhere across the world, and I hope there are many of you joining us from all over the place. We look forward to meeting you all in a moment. So that's good news number one. Really easy to enter from wherever you are, as long as you're 13 years of age or older. I want to say a few remarks. I'm going to turn to my next slide about schedule. As I said, registration opened on June 15th. There is a $15 registration fee for each entry, and that just helps cover competition admin costs, the cost of graphics, and doing things like this. But that leaves you tons of time to enter still. Entries aren't due until September 15th. So the first step is to register, to declare that you want to enter, pay your fee, and then you'll be given access to all the entry forms. And again, you don't need to upload those and put anything in the entry forms until you're completely done with your entry. But no later, of course, than September 15th, 5 p.m. Central Time. We're hoping to announce winners around October 30th. That's going to be subject to change depending on how many entries we get. So again, I encourage you guys all to register early. That gives us a good heads up on how many entries we may need to judge, and we can therefore schedule our time on this end accordingly. So that's a bit about schedule, and of course I can answer more questions about it as we move forward. I want to talk a little bit about some things that are the same as last year and some things that are new. So we'll move to the next slide, which is categories and classifications. But first, let's talk about that thing scrolling along the bottom, that 19,000 in prizes. We have a record number of prizes this year, which is huge. And we have 12 winners. So think of that, 19,000 divided across 12 winners. The stakes here are pretty big. At least financially, but there are other benefits too, which we'll talk about shortly. That 19,000 in prizes is a combination of digital prizes. The prizes will be conveyed through certificates online. So again, that makes it really easy for anyone to participate and to reap the benefits. About 8,500 of that, though, is cash, again, divided by 12 people. We've got two categories this year, same as last year, 2D and 3D cookies, and we'll be talking about how we distinguish between the two shortly. What is new this year, as well as the increased number in prizes, is we've got 2 skill classifications. One is a beginner intermediate class, and then we've got a second one that's advanced master. We introduced these classes this year for the first time because we feel we have enough entries to fill out now 4 categories. There'd be 2D beginner intermediate, 2D advanced master, 3D beginner intermediate, and 3D advanced master. In the past, the competition was just starting out, and it was hard to fill all those categories and therefore really judge them. So with the numbers being much larger, we have done this for that reason, a practical reason, but also the very good reason that it allows the competition to be more accessible to those just starting out in decorating. So we really do hope to see a larger number of beginners and intermediate folks take the leap into competition this year. So again, we will have 12 prizes across those 4 categories and classifications. In addition to that, we will be awarding one Carrie Vincent Best in Show Award. This award is named after my mentor, Carrie Vincent, who actually helped me start this show back in 2013 at her Oklahoma State Sugar Art Show. So we'll be awarding a prize to the one entry in any of the categories or classifications that we think really outdid itself. So that's a little bit about that. And again, there may be some lingering questions about these things, particularly the classifications, and we're happy to answer those as we get into the Q&A. Which brings me to my very next slide. I'd like to introduce our very special guest. I'm turning to that slide now, Sandie. It's none other than Sandie Beltran from You Can Call Me Sweetie. She's a master cookie painter, as you all know, as well as just an all-around fabulous decorator. She's judged this competition for a number of years now, at least 3 or 4, and many other competitions both online and in person. So I can think of no better person to answer your questions here today than Miss Sandie. So hi, Sandie. How are you?
Hello, Julia. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. Hi, everyone.
It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since SoFlo, I think.
I know. It's been so long. And can I just say, I need to give a shout out to my son, Hector. I want to thank him very much. I did not know that I didn't own headphones, but his gaming headphones helped me out today. So I look very gamerish today. Thank you, Hector.
Oh, God, that's great. Guys, we all have headphones on so that we don't get feedback, because Sandie comes into me on this switching software I use through Skype. And so when Skype plays back on a computer and also hears the recording off the computer, things go crazy. So we're hoping there's no feedback. We've tested this a few times. It was clear for us this morning in this morning's test. So if people want to comment and let us know if everything's okay, we would really appreciate that. And I'm assuming so, because I don't see anything. So we're going to just move forward and use this moment to take any questions you all might have about the competition. If we don't see any, we will move forward to some prepared comments that we wanted to make, comments that relate to questions I often get or comments that I often receive about the competition. Thank you, Lori.
Says that we're sounding great.
Okay, wonderful. So any questions from anyone? I'll stop yammering on here.
Don't be shy. Come on, that's what we're here for. Ask those questions, because we want to make sure that you guys have the full confidence to go ahead and register for this. This is going to be a great opportunity for you, so don't be shy. Ask questions away.
Yeah, it's really kind of an epic opportunity, particularly because it's online. I would say for anybody who's a little bit intimidated about getting started in competition, it is online. So the only people that really ever need to know that you've entered, if you're shy about it, the only person really is me.
Yep.
Because the judges all judge blind. They'll get the entries, they won't see your names attached to them, and they'll evaluate them that way. We think that's the fairest way to judge. And at the end, your names, of course, will be revealed. The winners' names will be revealed. But it's not as scary as, say, putting your piece down on a competition table next to someone else's and getting freaked out because theirs might look a little different than yours. So I encourage everyone to put aside the fear and get into it.
Lori's asking if she can see any of the past winners. So where could they go to see the past winners?
Great question. Absolutely. Cookie Connection is my community-based site. It's kind of home to the competition. There's a whole area in the Cookie Connection blog that's called Julia's Cookie Competition. And if you click on that, I'll open up every single post I've ever made about the cookie competition, at least in the last few years. So you'll have to scroll back a little bit to see the winner announcement. I think the post is titled Winner Reveal or something like that. So you can see the winners in there. Last year, again, we didn't have the two different skill classifications. So there were 3 winners in 2D and 3 winners in 3D. And then you can scroll back the next year and see a similar set of posts. So that will give you a sense of what people are doing, what the caliber of the winning entries are. So thank you, Lori, for that question. Any others? Okay, if not, we're going to be, Sandie actually, is going to be monitoring questions as we go. And if anything comes up, we're going to stop whatever we're talking about and just answer the live questions, because that's really why we're here. But I want to go on to some prepared remarks, because I'm sure you guys have these questions or may have had them even if you're not asking them. So I'm going to move to this next slide. This isn't so much a question, but it's often a concern that people have expressed to me, and I kind of touched on this earlier, that they don't really want to enter because they don't think their work is good enough to enter. So I wanted, I'm going to turf this to Sandie to talk a little bit about, maybe to debunk this myth a bit, because we do both believe it's a myth.
Yeah, a lot of people think that one of the misconceptions of competing is to win. Like, it's all about winning. And competing is so much more. There's so much more involved in that. And so I always try to tell people who come up to me and tell me that same remark, that I don't think my stuff is good enough. I'm not too sure. I'm nervous. I don't want to be embarrassed. Well, first of all, this is an online competition. And what Julia said is, there is type of privacy in the sense that it's not something that you have to pin next to another piece when you do like in-person competitions. And another thing that is really great about doing this competition is the growth that you will experience in doing something like this. Getting the constructive criticism and also the praise of the work that you've done. Really looking outside the box, challenging yourself, and really trying to push yourself to doing something that's uncomfortable. Like, I feel like it's really important, in order for someone to grow, you have to do things that challenge you. And this is the perfect opportunity to do that. Julia has brought to you an amazing competition that is going to be online. And remember, when it's online, you have a little bit more wiggle room to also submit more than one piece. So if there's one piece you're not too sure about and you want to try again, submit more than one piece. The sky is the limit when it comes to doing these type of competitions online.
Yeah, thank you, Sandie. And the other thing you mentioned was feedback. I think this competition is unique in the sense that we give really detailed feedback. You have to request it at the end because it's difficult for the judges. The judges will write feedback for everybody. I then compile it with your final scores, and that compilation process takes a lot of time. So you'll have to request it by a certain point if you want it, but it's a detailed form that shows your average scores, how they compared to the average of all competitors. So you can see kind of how you stacked up on various judging criteria, and also, most importantly, it provides feedback from the judges as to what you did really well, that they love to see in your entry, and then just areas for growth. So you're going to get a lot of direct feedback from it. You're not just going to be submitting it and winning or losing, or challenging your skills, which is a huge part of it. As Sandie said, you'll also be getting feedback so that you can improve those skills going forward. I think we have a couple of questions that came in.
Yes. Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Robin is asking, is 2D and 3D the only competitions you do?
So just to clarify, this is like one big competition, and under the umbrella of it, we have 2 categories you can enter into. 2D cookies are basically flat cookies. We'll come to those definitions in a sec. And 3D cookies involve multiple cookies configured into a freestanding composition. In both categories, we have size constraints and possible limits on the number of cookies that must be used, and we'll talk about that in a sec. Within each of those, there are skill level classifications. So within 2D, you can enter as a beginner intermediate person or as an advanced master. Same thing within 3D. You can enter as beginner or intermediate or advanced master. So there are a total of 4 categories / classifications that we'll actually be judging. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Now we also have Deborah, and she's asking, can you use mixed media such as modeling chocolate and fondant?
I'll let you take that one, Sandie.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the majority, I would say that if you're doing like a structured entry, that the structure should be, majority of it should be cookie, but adding mixed media definitely adds a lot of what is that? I like to say the oomph to your piece. So I would say absolutely adding mixed media is extremely encouraged. But seeing that it's overall a structure, cookie based is what's really important though.
Yeah, I would add, guys, I mentioned earlier on, I've got that section on Cookie Connection, and once this live is over, it'll post to my Facebook page where you're looking at it now. I'll add some of these key links to the actual post. I couldn't add them beforehand. But it'll be a link to this competition overview on Cookie Connection. That'll be one link. The other will be a link to the section of the blog that contains all past posts, so you can scroll through that. The competition overview is a key post, though, for you to review because it contains all the rules and regulations for this year. And you'll see, this is related to what Sandie just said. I'm coming around to it, believe me. You'll see that the judging criteria for 2D and 3D are listed there. I believe there's 7 for 2D and 9 for 3D. And one of the things we do evaluate on is the range of techniques used. We like to see you guys try new things. You know, but that doesn't mean you have to use all techniques. So I just want to clarify that a little bit. We like to see you stretch yourself and try new things. We don't like to see so much glommed into it. We don't want to see, though, too much glommed into an entry, too many attempts that don't work well together. So overall, the cohesive design is most important. So if you feel, don't add techniques, I'm saying, for the sake of adding techniques. Make sure you're using them for a reason that each really contributes to the overall design, if that makes sense. And as Sandie says, it's a cookie competition, so there's got to be cookie there. I know in the past we've had some amazing entries in competitions, but, I'm thinking back to 1 year ago that was dominated by sugar flowers, and the flowers were phenomenal. But it's not a sugar flower competition, so just remember that too.
Yeah, and there was one competition that I judged where most of the structure was made with pastillage, and there was absolutely no cookie in it. So we really weren't able to continue with that piece because we needed, it is still a cookie competition. So we would like to see the majority of it cookie, and seeing other mediums to it is a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, it's still a cookie competition.
Right. So thanks for that question. Sandie, are there any others?
Yes, so we have Olivia that says hi.
Hello.
And that she's happy to hear this year's event is online again. And she'd like to know whether we've considered participation certificates.
So by that, I'm assuming just issuing a certificate to anybody who's entered. Is that correct? Yes. I'm going to flip the question back at her and ask her what she sees as the value in that. And I will say that to this point, I haven't, because it's a lot of extra work. We are all a lot of extra work and more money to get those certificates designed, to get them issued, particularly when the competition is physical. They have to get to everyone. Sometimes I can't hand them out at the competition, so they have to be mailed. So I haven't considered it for that reason. Everybody who works on the competition does it on a volunteer basis, myself included. I pay no one. Maybe if there's money left over at the end of the day, I'll parse out $100 or so to each judge. But every single bit of sponsor money we generate actually goes back to the competitors. So, I guess I'm wondering what the value is to those entering and having that. How would you use it? Is it something would you want it digitally so it can be displayed online to say, hey, I entered? Yeah. That might be a cool idea, and that would be more cost effective for us to generate as well. So
yeah,
let's hear.
She did mention that's correct, that it's sort of an online certificate that they can print themselves.
Well, I like that idea in the sense that it, especially I'm thinking this through as we're talking here. I kind of like the idea, especially as people register, to say, hey, I registered, that sort of thing, because that also helps build momentum for the competition too. Um, but there's a little more oomph or prestige, I imagine, associated with getting sort of a certificate of completion, like, hey, I entered. I actually entered the entry, because we do have a lot of people who register who never actually complete the entries and then submit it. So let me think about that. I'll take that under consideration. I'd love to hear from you in further comments here about how you would use it, why you think it would be valuable. You can also email me if you don't feel comfortable putting that in the chat here. My email is sweetlife, SWEETLIFE @juliausher.com.
To be honest, if I put my 2 cents in it, I think
Yes.
that's a really good idea, because that's one of the biggest things where you can get 60 entries and then only 30 really submit.
Mhm.
So having that milestone of like actually committing and submitting should be recognized. I like that idea.
I like that too. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know how many times I've said that getting to the competition table or getting your piece actually entered is 90% of the competition.
Right?
So I think this kind of supports that thought.
Yes.
So yeah, let me think about that, and I'll see if I can work it in this year. If not, I think it's something we can definitely do for next year. Thank you for that.
Awesome, Olivia. Thank you for that.
Anything else?
All right. No other questions so far.
Okay, so I'm going to move to a second prepared kind of question or topic that I think might be worth just clarifying if there are no specific questions about it. And that's what's the difference between beginner, intermediate, and advanced master levels of the competition. Again, these two skill level classifications are new this year. They're ones that are self-assessed, so you guys are kind of on the honor system. The definitions of these classifications are in that competition overview link that I'll be putting under the post, so do read them carefully. I'm actually opening up that page right now, so if I'm looking down, that's what I'm doing. I was just going to read them off to you guys, and Sandie can elaborate if she'd like, and then we'll see if there are any questions about any of that. So again, beginner intermediate is sort of the entry classification, and we created it to allow more people to enter competition. I think some people see the past winners. Someone asked about that, and they get a little intimidated by the quality of the work. They may not feel they're up to that skill level. And again, I think having this entry level class should kind of ease the way for people who are just starting out or are in their first few years of decorating. So beginner intermediate is defined as sugar artists with less than 5 years of cookie decorating experience who are developing their skills. And again, developing is a little subjective, so think about that. There are also two other conditions. This category can include either hobbyists or those who work professionally in cookie decorating, as long as the individual is not a cookie decorating instructor or has not won a previous competition. So if you find that you fall into or have achieved any of the things in the advanced master level category description, then you would fall into that category. And that description is sugar artists with 5 or more years of cookie decorating experience and or those recognized by their peers or even by themselves as having advanced cookie decorating skills or mastery of cookie decorating techniques. This includes all cookie decorating instructors, because I presume that if you're teaching, you know enough, you've mastered techniques enough to be able to teach. So this includes all cookie decorating instructors and anyone who has won any prize in any cookie competition in the past. Again, it can include either hobbyists or those who work professionally in cookie decorating. We're more concerned with skill level, and some hobbyists might just dabble in it from time to time, but they're super skilled. Likewise, some professional cookie decorators may be churning out a lot of stuff and may not be paying attention to detail as much as some hobbyists. So they may fall in the beginner or intermediate depending on these criteria.
as you said, Julia, we will follow the honor system, but we can tell too. We have experience enough that we can see a piece that might be entered into the beginners or intermediate category, and we'll be like, this might not be to beginners. So that's something that we definitely will be able to see.
Yeah, and I would say we do not personally want to take the time to put you into a different category if we feel you don't fit. So we really want you to be honest about this. However, if we do see some real outliers, it wouldn't be beyond me to contact that entrant and say, hey, what's up? I want to talk to you a little bit more about your classification. And then I might make exceptions and move things around just because we want to be fair to everybody who's entering,
exactly.
Entering
100%. I will not shy away from looking at something that I'm kind of skeptical whether it's a beginners or intermediate, cookier. Now, we do have another question if you're ready for that question, or if you want to sum this up and we'll read it afterwards, Julia.
Oh yeah. So I've said enough here unless there are questions about skill level classifications. I can take another question. Let me move back to the side-by-side view of Sandie and me together so you can see her beauteousness in full scale. Or I think beauty is actually the word.
I'm
fun. I just woke up, so my hair is still flat to my head. I let it dry and I didn't do any grooming. So you guys are getting the unglamorous version of me today.
I've got my glamorous messy bun, which the little blurriness of it's frustrating me that my bun keeps coming in and out of focus.
I kind of like that.
It's driving me crazy. All right, so we've got a question from Carmen. She says, hello. In the video to send, is it only the decorated cookie or also the decorations steps? The competition is for any country, so there's two questions here.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the easy one is, anyone anywhere can enter. You just have to be 13 years of age or older and make sure you're following the competition rules and entering the right skill level classifications. The other question was, there is a required video submission. So let's just say when you register, you're going to be registering on my platform, Eventbrite. It's an event management platform. It keeps track of your email addresses and things so I can communicate with entrants really easily. It also takes payments. Once you do register, I'm getting around to answering this question, you're going to receive an automatic email from Eventbrite. Look for that email. Be on the lookout for it. It's your registration confirmation, and scroll down to the bottom. There's a little message from me there. It's going to direct you to what's called the online event page on Eventbrite, and that has links to the actual entry forms that you will use to submit your entry onto Cookie Connection. You're going to be uploading your entry when it's done to my site, Cookie Connection. So it's a two-step process. But I encourage you to look at those entry forms early on because they describe pretty much everything you have to upload. Now, one of the upload requirements is a video. As this person mentioned, it can't be any more than 100 megabytes. It's supposed to be a 360, if you're entering the 3D category, it should be a 360-degree view of the piece, finished. We don't want it digitally altered. We want it on a neutral backdrop. We really want the cookie to speak for itself. We don't want it all staged with stuff in the background. We should go around it. 100 megabyte video is going to give you about a minute or two of video time. So, just capture the high points, zoom in on things you think are particularly notable and not.
Zooming in, very important.
2D, same thing. You're going to have a 100 megabyte video. Of course, the piece will be sitting flat, so you just need to make sure we see all of it. And zoom in on things you think are of particular interest. Now, the rest of the things to upload are a series of photos and a couple of areas where you're going to enter descriptions. The photos are very specific on the entry form, so again, read it. One's going to require you to shoot all the pieces before they were iced that went into your entry so that we can make sure you have the right minimum required cookies for 3D. There are going to be a couple work in process photos so that we can see any unique things you did along the way. So the video is the end piece. You will have an opportunity to share work in process through photos. And again, there's a 100 megabyte upload limit on the photos. The two text areas that you enter are ones that are going to have you discuss your interpretation of the theme, how you conveyed the theme in your piece, And the other one is going to have you elaborate on the techniques you used, particularly any that you thought were unique. If you have an element on your entry that you think the judges might consider disqualifying because they're not sure it's edible, you really need to highlight what it is and assure us that it's in fact edible. So an example of that is luster dust. You know, some are not FDA approved, some are non-toxic, but not necessarily edible. So you want to be using an approved dust if you're using it. If you are, but you think we might not know that because it's hard to gauge visually, you should list the brand name of the dust so that we can check that and be sure.
Yes.
So other questions? I think there are a few coming in.
Yes. So Olivia is just answering back from your question regarding the participation certificates. She says, many thanks. Thanks a lot. I was thinking about the actual participation and also online, as we're all probably be joining from all around the world. As you rightly pointed out, there's difference between the registration and participation.
Yep.
So a standard certificate of participation we can also display to our customers and everyone for that matter. I believe this competition is far from regular local fun fair competition, and I strongly believe it's definitely worth bragging about.
Well, thanks for that compliment. And yeah, I'm going to work on this and see if we can't do that even this year. So we've got this year kind of mapped out, and I've got other work that I've planned in advance and mapped around it. So it's always hard for me to change. It's a little tricky sometimes for me to change plans midway, but I like this idea.
Yeah, I do too.
So thanks for that clarification.
Thanks, Olivia. So now we also have a question from Deborah. Will there be an example of what needs to be submitted?
Okay, so as I alluded to before, actually, if you go to the competition overview post on Cookie Connection, even today, and again, I'm going to put that link in under this when you're done. If you go to it, you scroll to the bottom. There are going to be two links. One says 2D submission requirements. The other says 3D submission requirements. If you open those, it's going to open up a PDF, and it's going to show you all the things that you'll need to upload. I'm not going to show you anybody else's actual entry from past years because I don't think that's fair, and that's kind of a private matter. But you're going to see a list of the things that you need to upload. It's about 20 things for each one, but they're pretty easy to put together. It's pictures of the work process along the way. It's that one final video, and it's a couple of text descriptions, plus your name, address, and stuff. There are lists of those already. But you won't be able to enter those things until you register, pay the $15 fee on Eventbrite. Then you'll get that email, which will have the actual links to the databases. And if you click on those links to the databases, they'll open up on Cookie Connection, and you'll see the list of things that you're prompted to enter are exactly the list of things on those PDF files that you can see in the competition overview. So if you're not sure you want to register right now and you just want to see what you have to enter, you can see that in the competition overview document.
If anybody has any doubts, Julia, can they reach out to you directly, or is there somewhere where they can?
Oh, yeah, they can reach out to me directly. I encourage them, though, to ask questions under that competition overview post in the comments section there, because then I can answer for everyone and everyone sees it. There are some folks from Japan who just entered a bunch of questions last night, for instance, and I answered them for everybody. So everybody gets the benefit of everybody else's questions. I think that's really fair.
Absolutely.
To add a comment on Cookie Connection, you need to join it on the home page. You just click the join button and enter account information, and you become a member. And if you're logged in, you can interact with the site. You can download things and you can add comments. If you're not a member, you might have trouble downloading that document, and you certainly won't be able to add comments. So it's free to enter, so it's really easy to do. So I encourage that. If for some reason that doesn't work for you, you guys can email me, of course, sweetlife@juliausher.com, and I'll leave all this kind of stuff underneath this post. I might even include the actual links to those PDFs so you guys can see them directly without going to the competition overview.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm writing notes here about what to include there.
So we're all up to date with questions.
Okay.
If you have any more questions, go ahead. Don't be shy. Answer away. That's what we're here for.
Okay, I'm writing notes here about what I'm going to link you guys to. Okay, so we're going to move on to another question I often get, which is, what is a 3D cookie? Again, we have 2D and 3D cookie categories. And 3D cookies kind of new to some people, so it's something I love to do, but not everyone's done it in the past. So I just want to read what we mean by each. And again, these definitions are in the competition overview quite clearly. I'm just reading from that just to stimulate questions here on the chat. So a 2D cookie, by our definition for a competition, is a single large flat decorated cookie or a collection of flat decorated cookies. We have no maximum cookie count. You must have at least one cookie, however. They're going to be arranged laying down artistically, however, in some relationship to each other, ideally, but not overlapping so much that we can't see the details of each cookie. Again, they should be photographed with minimal stuff around them, the final finished product, on a simple white or black backdrop, because we just want to see the cookies. By flat cookies, we mean that the cookies themselves must be flat, but they can be decorated with things that add relief. Like you could add a little fondant decoration or a modeling chocolate bow. But they're not constructed cookies. They're not two cookies put together, etc. We do have a size requirement as well, so read all the details. The entire entry, all the cookies combined, has to be no smaller than 1 foot by 1 foot, which is 30 by 30 centimeters, and no bigger than 3 feet, which is quite huge. 3 feet by 3 feet, or 91 by 91 centimeters. One question I often get is related to diorama-style cookies, where cookies are laying flat, but there might be two stacked on each other, maybe a frame on top of something underneath it. I would not consider that a 3D cookie because it's not freestanding, it's still laying flat. I would put that in the 2D category.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the 3D category definition, and I'm going to have Sandie add anything she might want to add. And I have a couple photo examples that help clarify the 3D bit. So a 3D cookie is a multi-cookie construction. So there are more cookies in it. For our competition, we require a minimum of 12 decorated cookies. There's no maximum cookie count. The cookies in the entry needn't be flat. You can curve the cookies. You can emboss them in molds. You can sculpt the cookie dough, so you can really handle the cookie dough in different ways. But they should be pieced together to form some kind of freestanding structure. The entire entry must fit into a 2 by 2 by 3 foot tall area, which is 61 by 61 by 91 centimeters. The entry can be smaller than this area, but it cannot be larger. And again, those dimensions relate to the cookie structure itself. So if you're putting it on an inedible board, don't count the board in those dimensions. We have these dimensions in large part for physical competitions where we need to fit a number of entries on a certain number of tables. So we have that so we know how many tables to get. Obviously, we're online this year and there aren't going to be physical tables, but it's also useful, I think, to kind of level the playing field because it's oftentimes hard for judges to evaluate a teeny tiny piece, say for instance, versus one that's huge. So we wanted to put some boundaries on it, but not so much that you guys feel confined. So that's what I wanted to say about those two definitions. Anything to add, Sandie, or any questions? And I can show photos in a sec.
Also, especially when you're doing the 3D pieces, I know that some of the videos that we saw last year, there was a lot of, in the video, there was a lot of clutter in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So remember, we're trying to see this video the best that we can. We want to get all the detailed in. There's going to be some detail that you're so proud of that we might miss if you have too much clutter around the piece. If you try to minimize that, that's really, again, it's all about making sure that your piece stands out, especially when you have a 3D structure that we need to go, completely around the entire piece. So maybe even having somebody maybe hold up a sheet behind it, or even having those science project boards, something like that. I mean, it's not required, but again, if you have certain details that you don't want us to miss, adding those type of things to your video is going to help a lot for us to not miss it, and then we can catch it. When it's in the middle of your dining room table and you've got a whole bunch of stuff, you've got, yesterday's laundry in the background, it's going to be really hard for us to see what's going on. So just a little bit of advice when you're doing a 3D project and you're doing your video, that's going to help immensely.
I would say that for 2D ones as well. Keep the background. We want the background really simple. We just want to see the cookies. Again, as far as submitting photos and video, they should not be digitally altered. I would say with one exception, if your lighting is really poor in your space, I could see doing an exposure adjustment, but we don't want to see, and sometimes we can detect. I do a lot of digital photo editing, so sometimes we can detect when something's been photoshopped. So, no photoshopping of errors, for instance.
It's okay for Instagram and your TikTok,
exactly.
But not for this competition. I'm going to be watching for that. Now, we do have some questions, Julia. When you're ready, I've got a couple of questions for you. All right. So Annette says that she won't be able to do the contest, but would like to register just to donate the $15. Can she do that?
Oh, wow. Well, I would love that so much because honestly, it's a tremendous support to the competition. So you would just register on Eventbrite the same way. You'd pay $15. You'll have to go through the steps of selecting a category, or it won't complete the registration process. But if you email me also after doing that, I'll just make a mental note that you're not planning to enter, so I don't expect to see an entry from you. But yeah, you just go through the normal registration process. You'll have to select as if you're entering, and then you just pay. And that would be wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
thank
you,
so much.
Annette. That's awesome. And this is not a question, it's just a comment, but it's from Diana. And she says that this is such motivation for all beginners like her, and that she thanks you so much for that. Yeah, I'm really excited that we were able to, move this into 2 categories, Julia.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I am really excited about it too. It just feels so much more inclusive that way. And honestly, let's get back to what the competition is all about. I mean, we've got great prizes. However, it's all about improving your skills. And so those just starting out probably have the most opportunity to do that. And this competition could really catapult you to the next level. So
yes.
You're getting feedback, remember, from people that are expert judges. We'll be talking to the judges in a future, more judges, because Sandie's a judge, in a future Q&A. But I select them very carefully for different, for a range of reasons, I should say.
Different reasons, yeah.
So, first I look at their skills. And so, Sandie's just all around very talented, but clearly has distinguished herself in painting. So she's kind of our resident painting expert. I tend to think that I'm kind of expert in 3D construction, maybe airbrushing. Ginny is a product person, creative cookier, develops products, knows how they're best used, particularly in the stenciling and airbrushing realm, and so really helps that way. And Stephanie is an expert piper, super detail-oriented, precision kind of piping. So, and Laura Saporiti, again, another all-around great, very skillful person with a lot of different mediums. She comes from Italy, so has judged many competitions overseas, more than I have, so she's got good visibility into the range of rules and customs and other competitions, not just cookie, but others. All of my judges have also either competed or judged other competitions, so they have an appreciation for what goes into entering either an online competition or an in-person competition, and also, how to evaluate them. I personally don't feel, though my judges have all competed in some way, that someone needs to compete in order to judge. I feel that judging requires almost more than competing experience, teaching experience. People need to know why techniques work and don't work so that they can provide the kind of valuable feedback that we provide. They need to have a mastery of them themselves and understand what works and doesn't work. So again, all of my judges have taught or continue to teach extensively, many of us all over the world. So that's how we're selected, and I don't know how I got off on that judge tangent, but I did, and I did, and I don't even know how I got there in my mind.
Perfectly.
Okay.
Eloquently said.
Okay. Well, but you guys will be meeting the judges, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the judging process in a future Q&A, maybe one in August. I'll also be probably launching some pre-recorded videos that we did last year from past competitors and winners about what they got out of the competition and how they approached it, and those are worth looking at too. So, any other questions, Sandie, from the group? If not, I'll move forward with what we had.
That's it for right now.
Okay, so I just want to expand on this 3D cookie thing a little bit with some visual examples. Sandie's going to go off screen. You'll be able to hear her, but you won't see her for a sec. This slide that you guys are seeing next is something that I pulled from one of my cookie decorating courses. I did a pretty in-depth 3D course in Japan earlier this year. And I just wanted to make very clear what I meant by a 3D cookie. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a cookie that's flat, that has a lot of dimension. It's got royal icing transfers, the flowers, also an elevated, it's hard to see in the photo, there's an elevated stenciled fondant applique that sits about 1/4 of an inch off the cookie. So if you were to look at that sideways, it has some relief. But it's a single cookie, they're not two cookies put together, and it's laying flat. That would most definitely be in our 2D category. On the right-hand side, however, we've got two definite 3D cookies. They're multi-cookie constructions. Each has more than the minimum of 12 cookies required for our competition. I think the one on the right has at least 20 on it, and the one in the middle has more than that. And they're assembled, obviously, into a freestanding structure. In addition to having those minimum cookie requirements, remember our 3D category requires, and so does our 2D category, requires that the piece be constructed specifically for this competition and tailored to our theme. We don't want to see anything coming in from another competition or past work you did for a collaboration in this competition. You've got to design uniquely for the competition to address the theme. And again, there are also certain size requirements as well, but those are listed in the competition overview. So hopefully that clarifies that. Any other questions from the group?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so Annette is asking if she owns a cookie group on Facebook. Can she invite you to post about the contest in her group rather than her just sharing a link?
Yes, I mean, I don't know. I may be a member of your group already, but if let me make sure I'm understanding the question. But if you make me a member of your group, when I post to Facebook, when I schedule the post, I can post simultaneously into multiple groups. So I can just add yours to the list that I post to, and hopefully it'll post. Sometimes I need to go back in and edit a few things because they don't always post properly. But is that what you had in mind? Because I'd be happy to do that. I think the more the merrier. If anybody else wants me to do that, I would love to get more people in the loop and knowing about the competition.
All right, and
Annette, if you want, you can email me or do whatever you want to kind of set that up. Okay.
yes, and then perfect. She says perfect and thank you. So she'll go ahead and do that. And then we have a question from Lori. She says, if you enter for the 2D and make more than one cookie, do you judge get all of them as a set or individually?
Okay. I'm not sure I understand that question, but
Yeah.
Lori, each entry for 2D has to have a minimum, each entry for 2D has to have at least one cookie in it, or it could be a set that makes a certain statement about the theme. So, last year we saw ones ranging from, most of them had more than one cookie. I don't know if we had one that was a single cookie, There's also a size requirement, so it has to be of a certain size, so that one cookie probably has to be pretty big. More often people are entering sets that relate to the theme and the cookies relate to each other in some way. However,
Collective way, yeah.
Yeah, in a collective way. However, you can enter more than one. So if you have two ideas that are distinct, that relate to the themes in different ways, you could do one set and enter it. You could do another set and enter it, and they would be separate entries judged separately. You'd get a separate judging number associated with them, and you would have to register twice on Eventbrite. So when you get to the form on Eventbrite, you're going to select your category and your skill level, and you're going to be given the option of how many entries you want to put into that particular category.
If I can add something,
Sure,
Julia.
sorry.
So, for instance, based off of the theme for this year, which is Broadway, let's say you have one one Broadway show and you do one cookie based off of that Broadway show, and then in the same entry you have a completely different
Yeah.
Broadway show, but you're putting it together into one entry, that is not what we want you to do. It would have to be kind of cohesive. It needs to be a collection. If you're going to do more than one cookie, they all have to be pretty much relatively within that same theme or that Broadway show, correct?
Hmm.
Now, if it's going to be a completely different Broadway show, you can't just get four different Broadway shows, do four cookies of it, and put it into one entry. They would be considered individual entries. Am I correct there, Julia?
I guess it depends on how they interpret the theme. You know, if somebody wanted to, I don't know, if somebody was really clever in their presentation of multiple different musicals, and it can be any kind of off-Broadway theater production for people that aren't familiar with Broadway in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
If they can relate them together through their theme description, remember there's an area to describe the theme, then I think it's okay to combine multiple in one. I just don't want to.
Okay.
I just don't want to see like a very different. I don't want to see very
They need to be connected in some way, shape, or form.
with through the theme and through the idea for the piece. And I think,
Got
Lori, if you go to the competition overview and scroll down to the winners from last year, you'll see what I mean. You'll see how they related their cookies to the theme of the year. And in fact, one of the links I'll include under this post, it'll take me a little while to get them all up, will be a link to the winners from 2021. So you guys can take a look at how things related to theme. Most of them had a pretty cohesive idea. Now, the one thing that's challenging about this year's theme, while we're on that point, is the theme. Last year we had a very abstract theme, thanks to Sandie, we had two themes actually, one for 2D and one for 3D, that were very abstract and really open to interpretation. I tend to prefer those types of themes. The theme that we're using this year is one we adopted because we were originally running this year at That Takes the Cake show, and it was their theme, and we just usually run with the same theme so as not to confuse people. However, I think the problem, I do require for my cookie competition that people do not copy copyrighted material, which means logos or characters, things of that sort, which is a little bit challenging with this theme because the tendency is going to be to recreate, for instance, the Lion King. You have to be really careful about that. So what we're looking for is people to use the concept of a Broadway musical or a theme. It could be to develop your entry. You could even develop an imaginary Broadway musical or production or theater production. As long as you describe, how you came up with it and why it's important to you in your theme description, that would be fine. As judges, we will not be telling you, like if you email me and say, hey, is The Lion King copyrighted? Well, it is, but I'm not going to be doing that work for you. If you have any question about what's copyrighted or not copyrighted, you'll need to do the online research to do that, to figure that out. And that's easy, because some images are in the public domain. If they've been published for a period of time, you're free to copy them. Others not, like the Disney images are highly protected. So, you'll have to do that research and determine it. If we get an entry where we feel something is a literal copy of something, chances are we'll deduct points. We're probably not going to, we tend not to disqualify anyone, but we will deduct points for that. The reason that's being is U.S. copyright law doesn't allow it, but also we really want to encourage creativity here and people thinking out of the box as opposed to just replicating stuff. So I wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Some questions?
Yep.
All right, so Cindy says, does all the work have to be hand-piped, etc., or can edible printers be used in addition to hand artistry? Which, remember, the Eddie is really, really hot this year, so this is a really good question.
Yeah, and actually one of our sponsors is Primera Technologies that makes the Eddie printer. So we encourage, as I said, we encourage a range of techniques and technologies to be used, some we deem are harder to do than others, so the judges might give them inflated value when they're evaluating things. But we encourage, so the answer is yes. The edible printer would be fine to use. If your whole entry was it, You might not score as highly as somebody who used it in conjunction with other techniques and did so in a skillful, kind of meaningful way. So, we're looking for creative applications of new technologies, I guess is the best, way to say that. Does that
Yes,
sound
dead
right?
on.
Okay.
Yes, because like I said, my forte is hand painting, and the Eddie is kind of putting that type of artistry on the backboard, which I get it when it is.
Yeah.
But I get it because especially when you're selling your cookies, the Eddie is an amazing tool to use. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think that it should be used minimally when it comes to competitions because and exactly what Julia said, you probably are not going to get the scores that you're hoping for if we see a lot of that tool being used instead of you using it, painting it yourself. Yeah.
Oh, I'd say the same is true of stenciling. I mean, I love stencils because I have a stenciling line, but they are they do employ somebody else's art to help you make your art, if you will. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So while we have many entries that use stenciling, if an entry was all stenciled, the feedback probably would be, we'd like to see you expand your range of techniques, particularly to ones that involve a little more handcrafted, like fully handcrafted work. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big proponent of stenciling, and I think there's a lot more skill involved, particularly in airbrushing with stencils, than people realize. It takes a lot of practice and handling of the equipment to really know how it works. And that's appreciated too. But again, none of it's the dominant thing you do.
Yes, 100%. Same thing with the Eddie. I feel like it's very clever how some of them use it as like a wallpaper background type of thing. But if it's like an actual edible image, like a predominant feature of your piece, I just wouldn't gravitate to that more than you just hand painting it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got another question from Diana. Should we choose one of them, 3D or 2D, as one entry competition?
So you guys, you can enter as many categories as many times as you want. There's a separate entry fee each time you enter. So when you get onto Eventbrite, you'll see you'll be able to select 2D beginner intermediate, 2D advanced master, 3D beginner intermediate, 3D advanced master, and it's going to tell you there's going to be a little quantity box. So if you think you're going to enter, if you define yourself as beginner intermediate and you want to enter the 2D category with two very different ideas, just make sure you enter two. If you want to also enter the 3D with one entry, just enter it once. And then you can sign up for as many as you want at one time. If you forget, or you decide later you want to enter more times, you can come back and enter again. It's going to capture it as a separate entry either way you do it. I hope that's clear. One thing I want to add is the skill level classifications. You are one skill level classification. Those do not vary by 2D, 3D. So if you define yourself as a beginner intermediate in 2D, you're going to be beginner intermediate in 3D because the skill level classifications, if you read them, define your overall state of cookie decorating. So I would not say you should enter 3D as a beginner and 2D as a master. If you're a master and you've taught cookie decorating, I'm gonna have you enter. You'll be entering as a master in both categories if you choose.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. No questions so far.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to what's up on the screen now, which is a question we often get about how we enter. And this is kind of a two-part question, I think. In my mind, there's sort of the how do I enter or how do I prepare for entry, both mentally and also in preparation of my piece. What are some of the things that judges look for or don't look for? I'm going to have Sandie kind of address that part of it, and I'll come in at the end and kind of remind you of the logistics, which is the second part of entering the competition. So Sandie, go ahead.
100%. The first thing that I look for is the cleanliness of your piece. making sure that if you're going to hand pipe something, that it's nice, clean work. With 3D, one of the good things, and we also really look at and we appreciate as judges, is making sure that if it's a 3D piece, that it's also decorated on the back. Many times we've seen some really great pieces that when we get to the back, it's unfinished, and it's kind of like a wah, wah, wah moment where you're just like, no, why didn't they finish the back? So that's something that's really important that should be done. Um, when painting on cookies, making sure that you really understand the medium that you're using to paint. um, I see a lot of times bleeding within on the royal icing. I mean, it's a really beautifully painted piece, but there's a lot of bleeding and a lot of warping, the eating up of the royal icing. That's something that I definitely look at, making sure that you understand that. And also, you know, that the being able to stop at something, if that makes sense. I've seen a lot of pieces where they want to build up their points, so they feel like they need to add more and more techniques and more pieces and more, and sometimes too much is kind of overkill. So being able to really step back and look at your piece and say, okay, you know what, this is a little bit too much. Sometimes less is more, as long as it's executed nice and clean work. That's something that really stands out. Thinking outside the box, maybe even creating new things that we judges have never even seen before. That's something that really excites me. Something that I'm looking at a piece and I have to go and look back at the description to really understand how it was made is a lot of fun too. And it's something that we really look at it and we really appreciate, is not being not what's the word I'm looking for a judge not to be able to really know how you did something is pretty remarkable. And it's really good because we have to kind of search and figure out how you did it. That's another thing that we really look at and we give high points for. So that's just like a couple of the things that we really look into when we're judging a piece.
Now, Sandie, when we talked yesterday, because we did talk in preparation for this interview, everyone, Sandie, you mentioned something about timing, how, allowing for adequate time was important. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Many times time management is one of the hardest things of being a cookier. I know that I always had that problem when I was doing orders for clients, and even now when I've got a deadline, having the adequate time to complete something is always one of the hardest things to do. And since this we've given you ample time to work on these pieces, but I know that some of us are procrastinators, is what they like to say. What I was talking about yesterday was, try to, when you're planning out your piece, you don't want it to be too simple, but yet you don't want it to be too complicated. It's always going into the project meeting in the middle. So the way that you would plan it out is to make sure that you have ample time to at least get, I would say, maybe 70% of what you were imagining that you were going to do for this project. If you at least complete between 70% of it and it looks complete and it is executed to the best of your abilities, then I would say that's the way to go. Sometimes we go into these projects saying, okay, I've got to do 100% of everything that I'm going to do on here. And then what happens, as you see, as you're getting closer and closer to the deadline, you start seeing that you can't complete 100% of it. And then you've done most of it, and then you back out and then you don't submit. And that's one of the biggest things that I've heard a lot in competitions, that, oh, I just couldn't finish it on time. Just be able to plan it out where you do have a list of things, but I would say, like I said, about 70% of it is done and it looks good. And then submit it. Don't try to do it all, and then at the last minute you have to back out. So that was one of the things that I was talking about yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
is just having a really realistic view of what you can do. And you know what, in case you do have extra time, then you can add on that additional 30% of work that you were going to add on it.
Mm-hmm.
But just in case you don't, you at least have most of what you were going to do done to the piece.
Mm-hmm. And on that time bit, I would say also, allow time for the entry process. There were a couple entries that were down to the wire last year. I mean, literally, like submitted at the 5 o'clock deadline.
Yeah,
So,
501.
so the entry process, there were 20 things on it. Again, they're all photos, and it goes, I've uploaded test entries. I can do it in 10 minutes, but you never know what your internet connection is going to be doing at that time of day, or, other technical obstacles you might encounter. So I would suggest make sure when you're budgeting your time that you budget to be complete at least a day or two before you need to have it in, and so that you have some time to actually go through that uploading process.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you don't want to do all that work and then miss the deadline. We are sticklers for, we will not judge anything that comes in late. So that's the one area where we do disqualify. Don't take anything past the cutoff point.
Yes, which we did have some entries
We
last
did.
year. We were like, "Oh, you serious? They submitted late. This is a great piece, you know?"
Yeah.
So it's something that make sure you've got that alarm clock set.
Yeah, and again, that's just out of fairness to competitors. It's not so much that it's going to hold up our judging. It's really that we want to make sure that everybody's operating with as similar operating conditions as possible.
Yep.
Anything else you want to say about sort of, the mindset of preparing, or sort of anything, Sandie? Otherwise, I can talk about the logistics of entering.
I always say, and it's pretty simple. I'm a person of few words. I'm a very visual person, so I'm a person of few words. But it's just basically, go into this not to win.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's great to win, and it's an amazing feeling, and the recognition. I mean, it's Julia Usher. To get a win
And
through her
Sandie
competition
Beltran.
is just amazing. But try to go into it as a learning experience. I think that's one of the mistakes that people do, is that they just go in to compete, when really it should be more of a growing experience, and you're going to come out of this on the other side bigger and better, no matter what the outcome is.
Yeah, I love that. I underscore that wholeheartedly. So the logistics of entering, I touched on this throughout the presentation, but just to recap, it's a two-part process. The first thing you do is you register to enter on Eventbrite, which is my event management platform. That's where you pay the $15 reg fee and select which categories you think you're going to enter. If you're not sure you're going to enter very many, maybe start with just registering for the one because you can always come back and add on later if you find you have time or you want to do a couple of entries. This also, again, helps us know, roughly speaking, how many people are going to be entering pieces, so I can gauge how much judging time we're going to need. It's quite a process for us. So we will individually score each entry across the criteria that you'll see on the competition overview. We'll determine some preliminary rankings, and then we meet as a judging team. I have to get a bunch of people together to sort through those rankings, because we don't always agree. We're usually pretty consistent, but we're sometimes off, not consistent a little bit in certain areas. So we always hash out differences of opinions, to make sure that one judge didn't overlook something that another judge saw. And once we've done that, then we'll announce finalists and then ultimately winners. So that process is quite involved for us. Long story short, the more advanced planning in terms of how many we need to evaluate, the better. So register early, I'd say even now, and then you have all this time to prepare up until September 15th, 5 p.m. Central Time. But the day or two before, you want to start uploading that. You want to upload that entry. You will need, the uploading of the entry happens on my site, Cookie Connection. Again, those links will come to you as soon as you register on Eventbrite. The links to the databases that you'll actually put your stuff in. So you want to look for that confirmation email from Eventbrite and scroll down to it. If you miss it for some reason, you can always go back to the registration page. If you've paid and you scroll down to the right, you'll see a little button that says Access the Event. If you've paid, you will be able to click on that link and you'll be taken to my online event page, which will also include the upload form links. If you have any trouble finding any of that, of course, you can always email me and I can send them to you. I'll confirm that you've paid and I'll send them to you. You can see what you need to upload without access to those links if you haven't paid by, again, going to the competition overview, scrolling to the bottom, and looking at those submission requirements documents. After this is posted, give me a few hours. I am going to add some links underneath the post, and they will include the competition overview, which everyone should read even before they register. It'll include a registration link on Eventbrite. It'll include 2 links to those the entry requirements form, one for 2D and one for 3D. And I'm also going to include a link to the winners post from 2021 so you guys can see sample winning entries. So all that information should be, again, underneath this post when I'm done. And when in doubt, go to Cookie Connection, my site, look in the blog, look under Julia M. Usher's Cookie Competition section of the blog, and every past post about the competition will come up. The most current post about the competition will be at the very top. So I think that's it in terms of logistics. I'm going to pause here and see if we go back to our beauty shot view and see if there are any other questions before we give a shout out to our sponsors and wrap up here today.
Yes. Any last questions?
It's so fun. I just opened up. I can see the comments too. I just opened up my little panel here on my screen. And it's so nice to see people from all over. That's been so exciting. I mean, I just have had a lot of email communications with people from all over the world as well. This is one thing that doesn't happen at the physical locations. We just can't have such talent from all over the world involved. So really, really nice to see that.
And I want to take this opportunity, Julia, to thank you so much for all the time. I mean, this lady works hard for this, everyone. And I just want to thank you for taking the time for doing this. It's so important for our cookie community. You are our queen, and thank you so much for doing something like this for us.
Oh, you're so sweet. And I like to think of our community as a collection of queens. There's so much talent. Everybody has their own special gift. Or gifts, and you're one of those very talented people, and I'm so honored to have you part of this judging team.
Very honored to be here, Julia. Thank you.
The other thing I didn't mention about who I select for the team, it's people I know I can trust. They're people I know I can trust to give their all to reviewing the entries and to reviewing them fairly. And each and every person on my team does, and there are no wild cards there. There's no one like doubting whether they're going to come through and doing a good job for our entrants.
Yes, absolutely.
That being said, I am going to thank a few other people before we get off here, and I'm moving to our sponsors slide. That 19,000 in prizes, again, 8,500 of that is actual cash. The rest will be digital certificates and things that get distributed to people with coupon codes and such for prize redemption. That's due to 17 companies that really gave it their all this year. Again, this is a record-breaking number for us. I think the number was closer to 14,000 last year. It just continues to grow each year as the competition grows. And I wanted to thank them. We have 2 levels of sponsorship. First, our silver sponsors. You'll be learning more about these folks, too, in subsequent blog posts and online posts that I make, but just some wonderful companies here. Many have been serving the cookie community for years. You'll see that takes the cake down here again. They'll be host of the competition again next year. We will be returning in person, I hope, at that time. Gold sponsors, these are our folks that have contributed to the highest level in terms of prizes, and there are 9 or 10 folks here, which is wonderful. Supplying the cookie business and also cake world in different ways. So thank you, everyone. I, if there are no more questions, we're going to close with we can't wait to see you, what you create. I mean,
Yes.
that's really so exciting for us.
So excited. I cannot wait to see all these entries.
I know, that's really always the exciting part. And again, and just another encouragement to register early, to give us some planning time. And Lori said, sorry for the crazy question. Spell check changed my words. It has a way of changing my words lately, too. So, hey, I also thank you to everyone here who asked questions. I don't really know what's not clear about the competition rules until people ask, and they're always good questions. So I really appreciate them. If you have more, I encourage you to leave them publicly if they relate to the general competition, and you can do that under that competition overview post. If it's something private, like do I qualify for advanced, master, or beginner intermediate, that's something we can personally address on email. I will, however, not provide any advice about how to execute an entry. And I will, I'm very hesitant to respond to questions I'm getting on social media now about techniques, because I don't know if that person's planning to enter the competition. So lately I've been having to ask people specifically if they're planning to enter competitions before I give too much technique advice. So if you want to reach me about the competition, I'm going to ask that you do not do it on social media, but you email me so that I'm more clear about who it is I'm talking to. So again, and I just do that out of fairness to everybody. I don't want to give technique advice to somebody who's entering the competition, unless it's competition, unless it's advice I'm giving to everybody. Okay, so I think that concludes it. Sandie, any closing remarks from you?
That's pretty much it. Really excited to be here. Cannot wait to see everybody's entry, and good luck to everybody. And yeah, see your entry soon.
Yes, thank you, Sandie. And I'll be posting this video will be posted immediately. I'll come back in with the links in a couple of hours.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again.
Love you.
Love you too.